Hey, my name is Harrison Hines. I'm the founder of Foundry. So Foundry is an advisory group and platform that helps projects tokenize. So we work on utility and consumer tokens, work tokens, security tokens, non-fungible tokens, asset-backed tokens. But for today, I'm going to talk mostly about what people are now calling consumer tokens, but what most people know as utility tokens or work tokens that you've seen a lot of launches over the last year or so. What we've done over the last 8 or 9 months is in October, November of last year, we launched what was called the Brooklyn Project. So it was a community initiative to really try to fix a lot of the things that were wrong with what was going on with token sales. There was a lot that was wrong, so we worked with the community, with regulators, law firms, to try to come up with a framework for how you could potentially sell a token in a safe and fair manner. So we actually launched those standards or published them on Monday this week. So if you go to our website or Google Foundry standards, you could see them all. But today I'm just going to walk through each of them one by one and kind of just explain what they mean. So the first one is, so on our platform, tokenfoundry.com, so when people come and first sign up, the first thing we make them do is take an assessment test. So this test is about 15 to 20 questions, and it tests a user's knowledge of just tokens and wallets and general information that you should just know if you're going to start participating in the token economy. So it'll ask you things to understand, like that keeping a private key safe is important, or that what the difference between a hot wallet and a cold wallet are, things of that nature. If you fail it, you have to wait 24 hours and then you could take it again. So it's just to make sure that people are well educated before they go and start purchasing any of these digital assets. So the next thing we do is not really that special, but just something standard that most people do, but just making sure that the people who sign up are who they say they are and go through KYC AML and actually take a photo of themselves so we could prove that they match the ID that they are uploading. But one additional thing that we do that we think all projects should do, and just to state, so the purpose of these standards is we're releasing them in hopes that other people start to adopt these and move the industry into a better direction. So one thing we do recommend that we do is that the sellers of these tokens complete a background check. So it's just to make sure that the people who are going to have access to the funds raised in a token sale have never done anything like financial crime related or anything like that. One thing that we do, and was a big reason for developing these standards and framework, was we thought it was very important, especially the goal is to sell these as clear utility or work tokens. So because we feel that if you sell them in this way, they would not be a security, or it's a lot less likely that they would be a security. Anyone could, of course, say something or market these things in a way that they shouldn't, that could change that analysis. But one thing that is very important to us is that our token sales are open for anyone to register for. So it's not just limited to accredited investors. Anyone who passes our assessment test, verifies their ID, can go ahead and register to participate in our sales. So we are actually resuming token sales in the US, open to non-accrediteds, and our first one will be July 31st using these standards, and that one will be open to everyone. One other thing that we feel is important and was part of, or a big part of the problem with how a lot of these sales were being done, is that we, for the main public token sale, or just all tokens that are being sold, are priced identically. So, like a lot of the sales that were happening, you have these huge discount structures where people are giving like preferential pricing to large crypto funds a month before they're selling it to the public. There really doesn't seem to be a good reason to do that, and actually it could be very damaging to the network because you have all these people who just got these assets at half the price of others. So when you launch it to the public, you just have a bunch of downward sell pressure because all these people who got it for much cheaper are just looking to cash out and like lock in a return. So if you look at actually the tokens that do a more fair pricing model, it's actually much healthier for the network, especially like when you first launch it. So all tokens, we use a simple sales structure. Pricing is transparent and fair across everyone. We don't give special privilege or access to just large purchasers. One other thing, so we focus a lot on network design and token design because we feel that if that is flawed, that these networks are dead on arrival because most of these tokens are just A, they're causing friction, or B, are just completely unnecessary. But other things are not just the token and what its use is, but also the token supply and the sales structure. So token supply specifically, one structure we like to see is when these networks have some sort of mining or reward element built in so that the value over time gets more evenly distributed to the people that are adding value to the network, similar to how Bitcoin mining rewards work or Ethereum mining rewards work. A lot of these networks, if the crypto system and the token and incentive system is designed properly, we feel that a mining or reward type mechanism built into the supply is a very healthy thing to have. But also making sure that whoever this project team is not retaining a huge portion of tokens unnecessarily, or doing any sort of weird things, or having burning mechanisms or anything that would artificially try to inflate the price of this token. A very important feature is that these networks must actually be decentralized and actual crypto systems. So we don't no one should just be designing tokens for a closed system where a company is just trying to add a token that's just for them. If they want to do that, that's fine, but that's not really what a token or a utility or a worker token is by our definition. So Mike Golden has a very good rule for what makes a crypto system, but very simply, a token should be a necessary element of an open system that is self-sustainable, meaning that if you were to take this token out and use something else in its place, that it would actually be damaging to the network. And the self-sustaining part really means that to create an open system, if the people that launch this network were to fall off the face of the earth the next day, that this system would still be able to function on its own. This is another very important point. So for every sale that we do, we require that anyone who registers, part of the registration process is that you actually have to answer questions to prove that you understand what the token does, what it's used for, and that you have intent to use it. And we actually go further than that, but that's coming later. But basically, if the token is used to run a node, or if it's specific to a certain industry, we will ask questions like, have you ever ran a node before? Do you have the equipment necessary to run this specific node? It's not crazy. It's 3 questions proving you understand what it does and a few questions proving your intent to use. And I'll come back to that later. But one other thing we do is that if someone does request more than $10,000 US worth of a token, we actually force them to provide additional information explaining the reason for their large purchase. So if you're requesting $1 million worth of a token that performs a specific function, like we want to understand like why do you actually need that many tokens? And we did a test sale using this, and it worked quite well. And it was actually like a really like positive end result, because the people that you actually get into the sale are like the real people who actually care about that network and intend to use the network. And you're not just selling like 90% of your tokens to a bunch of people who are just looking to hold it and flip it, because that's actually really damaging to the network. One example of like how I compare utility tokens to like a real life example is like the concept of a taxi medallion, because like a well-designed work or utility token accomplishes a similar thing where it gives you the right to perform a specific function within a defined network. So like think about if like 75% of the taxi medallions, people are just sitting on them rather than actually using them to drive taxis and power this network. And also a good thing to think about with that analogy is like everyone right now is so focused on just buying these tokens and holding them. And they're really missing the point, because like no one just buys taxi medallions and holds them. The whole point is to either use them to drive a taxi or lease them to someone else so they could drive a taxi and you could share in the revenue they earn. So like part of what we're trying to accomplish is to teach people that like they really should not be so focused on just buying these things, but actually using them to power these new decentralized networks, because the people who realized that that was an opportunity early in Bitcoin and Ethereum are really the ones who did really well in this space, because they realized that if they just share resources, whether that be computing power or storage or bandwidth or knowledge, like that's the whole point of these networks, that now you can pretty much enable anyone in the world to perform these functions and get rewarded or like gain value by doing so. And the majority of the value is not in the taxi medallion appreciating itself, similar to these tokens. It's really in what the token enables you to do is where you should or can capture the most value. One other feature we have is that we don't sell tokens until you actually have a live network. So you can, like a test net is the absolute minimum, but we actually prefer that you just launch and do your token sale in conjunction with the mainnet launch of your product. And that seems pretty just intuitive. Like if you're selling a product to use within a network, you probably should have the network. If you do sell them before, like when you have a testnet version, you want people to test it, maybe your early users, so you sell tokens. They definitely cannot be transferred until you have a mainnet launch of the product, because like secondary trading, and I'll get into that more in a second, but pre-product or mainnet launch of a network, trading is definitely one thing we think regulators definitely don't like about the way a lot of these sales were happening up until now. One other thing we do is, so if you read SEC Director Hinman's comments from 2 weeks ago, one concept that he touched on a lot was sufficiently decentralized, using that as sort of a barrier to what proves these tokens are not securities. And like that definition of sufficiently decentralized is something we're trying to get a way better grasp on. I think it is network to network specific. But so after the token sale and after mainnet launch, for a minimum period of 45 days, we actually only allow these tokens to be used for their intended function. So if they're used to stake to run nodes or to add points of interest to a curated registry, that is all they could be used for. So they could only be transferred within the network and within the system until at minimum 45 days. It could be even longer, until the project feels that the network is sufficiently decentralized based on their network design and token usage. And then you can remove the transfer restriction and open it up to allow people to resell it and new users to come in and buy it. And that we do trustlessly through smart contracts. One other cool thing, so we make them prove intent to use when they register, but this is probably the coolest part of our standards is the concept of proof of use. So this is also something we do trustlessly through the token contract. But if you buy tokens before you're able to resell them, you actually have to use them. And it's based on how many tokens you buy. So if you were to buy, I'll take Foam, for example, one of our projects. So it's a work token, but it also has a functionality where you could use it to add points of interest to like a crowdsourced map. So if you buy 10 tokens, maybe you only have to add 2 points of interest to the map. But if you buy 1,000 tokens, you are going to have to add more points of interest to the map, or run a node and prove that these tokens you're buying were actually used before we let you resell them. That was actually the last one. So I would say, yeah, in general, we do feel that properly designed decentralized networks and a work token or utility token that powers them can have very profound impacts on the world. And I think you'll start to see a lot of very cool decentralized work token powered networks that handle use cases that you probably can't even think of today. But we just feel that up until now, a lot of the activity or focus was on speculation and some bad activity or bad actors. So we're just really trying to reset the standard and move forward with a new framework that hopefully other people adopt as a safe way to sell these work tokens and launch these decentralized networks in a way that would not put consumers at risk, protect them, prevent fraud, and actually allow these super cool new networks to launch and not be afraid or have uncertainty that their networks might get deemed or their tokens might get deemed securities. So we're trying to provide a way for people to gain clarity and hopefully have a go forward framework they could use that those concerns are mitigated. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.